Alright, so the first thing we want to do is we want to use authentication facade. When we have implemented that, what we want to do now is we want to be sure that the user is, first of all, authenticated. So let's say if authentication user, and then let's just say user equals to user find authentication user, and then let's grab the ID from here. When we then have grabbed the ID, we wanna then return, and we wanna just be sure that we return the view. So let's go in and return the view with the variable user. And then we wanna go in and grab the page from our resources file, which is user.edit. So let's go in and say user.edit, and then we actually just return that here. So one last thing we could do in the weird scenario that for some reason it would fail is we could go in and say if user. Sometimes it could be the scenario where for some reason it would fail finding the ID, which shouldn't happen because you are first checking if you're authenticated and then we grab the user ID. But in that scenario, we want to return that here, and otherwise we want to go in on both of these conditional statements and return redirect back, because you are not authenticated, and therefore we want you to just go back to the previous page you were using. Okay, great. So now that we actually grabbed that here, let's go in and test it out. So let's go in and say user edit. Oh wait, sorry, let's go in and say what we called the route was, we need to create the route first, of course. So let's go in and create the route here, and then let's go in and say edit user, and then let's go in and call this edit user.edit, and we also want to create the update route. So let's go in and create that right now. We want to send the post request to the update function and say call this user.update instead. And if we now go in here and we just go in and say something like edit user, what we should now see is an empty page. When we have logged in, of course. So of course that's why it didn't work. So we can see now the authentication system works because it didn't allow you to be on the page. So we already now have tested that function. So let's go in and say edit user, and this is an empty page just as we wanted it to be. Okay, great. So what we want to do now is we want to go inside our resources and we want to grab everything from the register here. We will just grab it all, and then we will remove the password fields and update the text, so we can indicate to the user that you're updating your profile here. So you can update your username and name and your email. And let's say update profile, and let's put this to user.update, and beside that let's change this to update user, update details. Okay, so now if we go in here, what we will see now is we will see a form with the ability to update your name and your email address. What we want to do now is we want to pass in your current name on this account and your current email address by setting in value, and then go in and say user name, just like we did with the user profile. And we want to do the same thing down here. Now we know these fields are required, so therefore we don't have to do a conditional statement or anything. We just need to be sure that both of these fields, when you submit it, are not empty and that the email address is unique. So that's the validation we want to do from this part. And beside that, we also want to add in the link here in the menu. So let's start with that. So let's go inside our app.blade.php and let's go in here and say we want to basically just go all the way down here to view profile, and this just go in here and copy and paste this. And then let's call this user.edit. We don't need to pass in any ID here, so we don't have to do that. Then let's call this edit details. And by now refreshing this, we will be able to see it up here in the route. It is easy to access. We have a route link that allow you to go in here or go into view your user profile. And what we want to do now is we want to go inside our user controller and first of all test with a DIDOM that this works. So let's go in and say request, and then let's make it DIDOM with the request. And see what we get passed in. So let's just click update details. It should ideally create a DIDOM here. Perfect. So we have everything we need here. So now we can actually go in and update the user profile. Now let's start out with just finding the user in the variable here, and let's say user equals user find authentication user ID, and then let's say if user is found, then we will begin validating and authenticating, saving your details, and if not, then we will return a redirect back. And in this scenario, we want to first of all say user name is gonna be equal to request name, and then we want to have email, which is gonna be equal to request email. And then we want to say user save. So ideally right now what we would do is we would be able to see these details we changed and there wouldn't be any validation. So let's test this out first and then afterwards implement the validation. So let's just change the name to Sophia and see what happens now. If we refresh the page, we have Sophia, the same here. Of course, what we also want to do is we want to return a redirect. Back. And to those of you who wonder why I use redirect back all the time, is because we are gonna have a separate video where we are gonna put in custom notifications. So we are gonna have this for this, of course, but we are gonna have custom notifications in its own widget, and we are gonna return redirect back. So we're gonna create our own system there, so it will be a little bit more organized and easier to implement. So now we have the opportunity to update it. Now we want to validate the information. Alright, great. So let's validate the information. So let's go inside here and let's say validate equals request validate, and then let's go in and say put in an array, and in this array we want to say, first of all, name is gonna be required, and let's put that to a minimum of 2 characters. And then let's go in and say email is gonna be required. It's gonna be unique to users table, and also we just want to pass in email. Okay, so now if we go in and refresh, let's test this out. First of all, we want to test if you can go in and submit an empty detail. And first of all, we should actually also go into our edit.blade.php and remove the required field just up here, just to check, because we obviously don't want to not be able to submit the form because of HTML. So now let's go in and see what happens if you go in and send an empty request. That's a spelling error. So let's go in and change this to validate. And then by doing this again, we should be able to see that it will just return back, but this will say the name field is required. Of course, we return back with the same name before, so and the email has already been taken, so that's also a thing we need to fix, because we also want to be sure that you can update your email address and make it unique here. So what we can do is actually pretty simple. So what I would do in this scenario is I would actually go in and I would grab the user details from the authenticated user, and I would say if authentication user email is equal to request email I want to just have a different validation. The reason why is because we want to not care about if it's unique, if it's the same as before. We just want to have it like this. Otherwise, we want to have it unique. And then we should be able to save the details. Let's go in and see what happens now. So if we click update details, ideally it should actually just go back and say nothing, which it did. So if we now go in and say something like empty here, we should ideally see that the name cannot be empty. Okay, great. So now that that's done, we know that the email should be unique unless it's your old email. Then we don't really care about that. And beside that, we actually have a successful validation here. So we check if the email is unique, we update the details, we send back with some information here. Now we want to tell the user that this has successfully been updated. So what we want to do now is we want to just grab these details here, and we want to just make sure that we return the user back, and then store a flash message and display it on the page. Okay, great. So what we're going to do now is we're going to say validate equals null, and then we are going to say if validate. So if this has successfully been validated, we want to go in and we want to return that it has successfully been validated. Otherwise, we just want to return back with the arrows. And then we want to store a flash message. So we're going to say request session flash success. And we want to say your details have now been updated. Okay, so what we now can do is we can now close this down and put in and display the request in here. So the last thing we're gonna do now is we're just gonna go in and say if session has the message, then we're gonna say div class alert, well alert, and then we're gonna end the div here. And we are also gonna, of course, change this to success. And let's see what happens now. So let's refresh the page first of all. And let's go in and say Matilde. And let's go in and update here and see what happens. And let's of course also just add in alert is success. So now let's go in and refresh again and then update it. And then we can say Sophia again. And what we will see now is a green successful box. Okay, great. So now we can successfully change our user details, no matter if you want to change your email or not. All of it is validated completely. And that's actually all for this video. So thank you very much for watching. See you in the next one where we are gonna be able to change our password.